Hogwarts, a History. Fanfiction written by Cooper Christensen. Music by Kevin MacLeod. Chapter 2. Act 1, Scene 13. Exterior. The Hollow's main square, night. Most of the coven has come to witness the trial being held in the square. They form a circle around the center of the square, which is lit with red glowing torches. Salena, Salazar, and Paddock stand on a small stage in front of everyone. Godfrey stands with them, loudly addressing the crowd.
For those of you who are unaware of what transpired tonight, allow me to break the tragic news. Our hollow has been breached by dark magic, and as a result, a young member of our coven has been killed.
The crowd murmurs. Cut to Nearest and Esmond in the audience, with tears still on their faces, their expressions void of any emotion.
And another won't live to see sunrise. The dark arts were involved, and there can be no justification for tampering with such power here.
A few angry members of the crowd voice their support for a trial and swift punishment.
If any of you have valid evidence concerning tonight's catastrophe, I invite you to speak now.
The crowd wait in silence. Show Deirdre standing with a scowl on her face. Gray and Malkin stand at her feet in the front of the crowd looking scared.
Very well. It has been suggested that a grimoire of the dark arts was used to conjure a demon. The book in question was most likely lost in the fire, therefore it cannot serve to identify its user. The one who is found guilty of using it will be charged with the crime of experimenting with the dark arts. The guilty party will be driven from the hollow and properly obliviated.
More murmuring. Godfrey takes a small black vial from the cuff of his sleeve and approaches Salazar with it. Selena whispers to Salazar.
This potion will make you tell the truth.
Salazar's eyes look to Selena and back at Godfrey as he reaches him. Godfrey grabs him by the back of his hair to pull his head back forcefully. Salazar tries to resist but opens his mouth in pain from Godfrey pulling on his scalp. A drop of veritaserum falls into his mouth and he releases him.
Identify yourself.
Salazar rolling his eyes.
Salazar, the only son of Isaac.
Have you ever seen the grimoire in question?
Yes.
And where did you get it?
Deirdre from the crowd.
Objection! I have never touched the grimoire. I saw it on the first night I arrived here, when Godric flaunted it after overpowering a peddler and taking it from him as a trophy.
Salazar stares around at the shocked faces, indifferent to their reaction. Godric can only hang his head. Godfrey, clearly bothered by this revelation, paces in front of the defendants.
And have you, Salazar, ever used dark magic?
Deirdre speaks up aggressively.
Objection! The boy's past is not on trial, Godfrey.
Answer the question!
Salazar looks worried as he tries to resist the effects of the veritaserum. Unable to hold back, Salazar blurts out.
Yes, I have, but not this night. I am innocent.
You see? These foreigners have brought dark forces into our safe haven.
The crowd become enraged. Signaling to his right-hand man, Brennard, with a jerk of his head, Brennard responds by conjuring magical yellow chains around Salazar's wrists, ankles, and mouth. Salazar's wand is magically pulled from his robes into another thug's hands.
Our innocent children are dead. Because of them!
Selena bursts out.
Howard was far from innocent. He tortured my brother with a dark curse.
The crowd erupts in anger. A man in the crowd screams,
Liar! She's lying!
As the crowd reacts to this news, Nearest covers her face and sobs into her hands. Godfrey crosses angrily to Selena and violently tugs her hair back. She grunts in pain. Her mouth is forced open to receive a drop of veritaserum. Paddock flinches at the violence, tears still in her eyes. Salazar struggles against his chains.
Have you ever used dark magic?
Godfrey, you're a bloody tyrant.
Selena glaring up at him, clearly upset.
Yes, but I...
Guilty! You have all heard it under the power of veritaserum.
Godfrey gestures to Brennard, who conjures more chains to bind Selena, and another thug takes her wand.
They have infected our coven, and they will both be exiled this very night.
Deirdre steps up on the stage to address the crowd.
Do you not see the corruption? Godfrey will not hold his own kin accountable for their actions. Will you allow these two to take the fall for the irresponsible actions of his own son?
They have broken our most important law.
Their usage of the dark arts was committed before they came to find refuge here. Outside of this coven, there is no law against the dark arts. Your jurisdiction does not...
And what if their use of this dark craft is the reason they need refuge? This coven must expel any remnant of dark magic if we are to have the peace and safety I have promised them. I will not allow the Hollow to harbour dark arts offenders.
If that be the case, then you know you must banish me as well.
The audience quickly react to this revelation and fall silent once more. He glares at her angrily, not wanting to sentence her, but he knows that he must.
Very well. Your fate shall be the same as theirs.
Godfrey waves lazily at his henchmen, who conjure more chains to bind Deirdre, and the thug collects her wand. Paddock looks horrified for her friend. Godfrey paces, listening to the crowd's reaction. Then he bends to violently clasp the fabric Paddock wears, lifting her off her feet by her collar. He then pours the remainder of the Veritaserum down her throat as she chokes and tries to cough it back up. Salazar, Salena, and Deirdre all struggle to fight back. Grey cries into her brother's shoulder as he glares up at the injustice being done. Paddock continues to sputter the potion down the front of her, the crowd aghast. Godfrey looking deranged, still holding tight to the collar, ignoring everyone else.
You have given a dishonest account of tonight's events.
No, sir.
Have you ever tampered with dark magic, elf?
Never, sir.
Godfrey drops her to the stage with a thud as she collapses. She tries to get up, but vomits the overdose of potion and stays down, too weak to stand. A tear slides down Selena's face, unable to bear the injustice any longer.
These three who you have heard testify against themselves will be cast out and obliviated.
Godric quietly steps forward.
Father,
Godfrey ignores him.
a punishment more than fitting for the horrendous usage of the dark arts.
Godric speaks louder.
Father.
Let this be a warning to all of you. Any that so much as speaks about dark magic will receive the same sentence.
Father, please.
Silence. All eyes on Godric. Godfrey stops, unable to look at his son.
You know that we are guilty as well. I took that grimoire from a peddler as part of his payment for entering the Hollow without permission.
I am not proud of it, but we have been experimenting with this magic for some time now.
A small cry can be heard from somewhere in the crowd as Godric's mother hears the confession.
They were only trying to prevent us from tampering with things beyond our knowledge.
Godric's voice breaks, a pause, and he continues softly, speaking only to his father.
I did not have the courage to stand up to those I considered my friends, and so the fault is mine. My friends are dead because of me. Father, it was all an accident. Don't blame them for our mistake. I wasn't brave enough to stand against what I knew to be wrong before, but I'm standing against it now.
Godfrey glares at Godric intensely. Shaking, he matches Godric's soft tone.
As far as I'm concerned, my son was numbered among the dead tonight.
Godfrey gestures for Brunner to chain his son. A moment of hesitation, and then chains appear around Godric's wrists. His mother can be heard sobbing. Godfrey removes the brown-pointed hat from his head with a defeated look at the ground. Then he passes it to Brunner, whose wand acts as an anchor for all the yellow chains holding the captives together. The thug relieves Godric of his wand in the same way as the rest.
Round up the others. They're all guilty.
The crowd begins to object in a panic.
Ensure they are all banished and properly obliviated.
Godfrey makes his exit as the crowd becomes frantic. People yell and scream as Godfrey's thugs try to find Nearest and Esmond remaining in the crowd. Nearest's father turns Godric around by his shoulder and punches him square in the mouth. One of Godfrey's men hits her father with a jinx, throws him cartwheeling through the air away from Godric. Nearest's family can be seen trying to protect her from another trying to take her into custody as she sobs. Fists are thrown and spells are fired. The chaos consumes the scene immediately as people fall to the ground trying to avoid the spells and return to their homes. A man grabs Esmond as his family tries to help him escape. The man is forced to attack Esmond's mother in order for her to let go of him. Gray and Malkin run to Paddock's aid. Deirdre looks frantically to Paddock and their eyes lock as her children are helping her to her feet. They exchange sorrowful glances and Deirdre's chains are pulled forward aggressively through the spray of spells in the chaos. A full-on brawl in the square has started as people run for cover and fight the thugs. The one holding the yellow chain binding Nearest on the tip of his wand lofts the chain to Brunner, who catches it and adds her to the clump of chains bundled on the tip of his own wand. Nearest is reeled in by the shrinking chain as she kicks and cries for her family to save her. Finally, Esmond is added the same way, but he puts up no fight at all. Those in chains are pulled aggressively off the stage and around a building to an alleyway. Show Godric's mother slumped in the dirt, sobbing as spells fly over her head. A friend tries to protect her and get her to safety. The men under Godfrey's command are identified by their gaudy wardrobe and begin stunning everyone in sight. Women and children run for cover as everyone is under attack. A chain gang stands in the alley, powerless as spells cause the shingles above them to shatter and rain down on them. Brunard grabs the chains in his fist, separating the bundle from his wand with a sharp tug. Then he takes Godfrey's hat, turning it upside down.
He taps the brim of the hat with his wand and says,
Horses. The whole hat glows light blue and then fades to its original color. A jinx flies over their heads and cracks the plaster on the wall behind them. The hat begins to vibrate violently in his hand, and Brunard thrusts his other fist full of the yellowish chains deep into the hat. The chains begin to reel themselves inside. Soon, everyone's hands have been pulled so they are all touching the hat, and it begins to spin. A moment later, they are all jerked off their feet into the spinning portkey to disappear inside it. End scene. Act 1, Scene 14. Exterior, Banishment Hill, night. A flash of lightning and they all appear from out of the portkey. The hat falls to the ground at Brunard's feet, and a few of the other portkey passengers fall to the ground with a heavy thud. The rain falls hard and drenches them quickly. The length of their chains has reverted back so everyone is more spread out, and the sounds of more spells erupting in the distance can be heard as the chaos in the hollow continues. Brunard raises his wand to point the end between Salazar's eyes.
Right. Now to make sure you never find your way back to the hollow. Dark magic, or any magic at all.
Brunard is clearly taking too much pleasure in this. Salazar glares at him for half a second when Deirdre charges at him, tackling him to the ground. He drops the chain in his fist and everyone is set free. With a rapid movement, she snaps his arm up into the air. The wand fires red sparks with a loud bang, then slips from his hand and falls between the rocks. Deirdre struggles to hold him as she shouts at the others.
Get the wand!
Salena jumps to where the wand fell and Brunard elbows Deirdre in the face with his free arm. Deirdre releases him and Salazar jumps on his back. Meanwhile, Salena struggles to stretch her hand far enough between the rocks and reach the wand. Lightning flashes again as Brunard grabs Salazar and throws him over his head onto his back. Brunard gives him a hearty kick in the stomach and is about to kick him in the face when a spell hits the cliff just over Brunard's shoulder, shaving off a few shards of the tough rock. The fighting stops and Brunard turns to see Godric, pointing the wand directly at him. A fierce look between them both as Brunard raises his arms in submission.
Godric, you don't want to do this? You've already disgraced your father enough as it is. What might he say if he saw you now?
As far as I'm concerned, I have no father. Brunard's eyes widen in fear.
Obliviate.
Green, ashy wisps of magic flow from Brunard's open mouth and into the tip of his own wand. Brunard's shoulders and face droop. Godric lowers the wand and Brunard slumps down against the rock, his neck having trouble holding his head up. Then he begins looking around at everyone and his location. A childish smile stretches across his face as he holds out his hand to catch the rain. Salazar helps Deirdre to her feet. Brunard speaks mindlessly.
I do enjoy a good thunderstorm.
You actually erase his memory?
Better him than us. They're the enemy now.
Esmond asks in disbelief.
The enemy?
Well, they certainly aren't your friends. That's our family you're talking about!
Salazar responds.
You have no one to blame but yourself, and you know it.
Neera searches for the words to express her anger when Deirdre steps in.
Stop your squawking, all of you. It won't be safe to stay here long. We need to find shelter.
What's out here?
Deirdre starts making her way down the rocky cliff face.
Godfrey rounded up dangerous creatures from their native habitat in the tropics and brought them here to protect the hollow from unwanted visitors. Come along. There looks to be a cave at the base of this cliff.
Salena and Salazar follow her, and she turns back to see that the others are staying behind awkwardly.
We may not be friends, but there is safety in numbers. Unless the three of you know how to conjure a corporeal Patronus, I think I'd better hold on to that.
She holds her hand out for Godric to pass her the wand. After a moment's hesitation, he does. Nearest is obviously bothered. Esmond helps Brunard to stand.
We're leaving already? Alright then. You know, I actually sleep much better when it's raining.
Godric picks up his father's hat and looks to the sky for the signs of the creatures. Then he follows the path down the cliff. The camera pans away. Brunard's voice can be heard from afar as he looks up into the sky to feel the rain on his face.
Oh, the plants are going to love this.
End scene. Act 1, Scene 15. Interior, cave on the cliffside, night. The group of misfits file in as Deirdre prepares some dry brush and twigs in the center of a rather large cave and spouts a tiny fire from the tip of the wand. Brunard makes it in out of the rain just in time to see the magic from the wand, causing him to give a small yelp of fright. The rain is pouring outside. Deirdre looks angry as she perches herself on a boulder. She moves her wrist, holding the wand to test how it feels. Salena and Salazar sit quietly on the ground together, warming their hands, their backs against the wall of the cave. Nearest sniffles and quietly wipes the tears that she's been crying. Godric leans up against the wall of the cave, his back to the group as he turns the hat in his hands. Esmond helps Brennard to sit down and then lays down on his back, staring at the top of the cave. Brennard sits cross-legged on the ground, his eyes locked on the wand in Deirdre's hand, clearly afraid of the stick that spouts fire. A long silence. Salazar's the one to finally break it.
You must be furious with me, Deirdre. I know it's my fault that you were dragged into all of this, and for that I'm truly... Save your apologies, lad. Truth is, it's just what I needed. I see now that I should have left years ago. I put up with their totalitarian ways for too long. You were right to call me a coward. I've been hiding out in me private refuge, and the world's gone to absolute shite in me absence.
Deirdre spits into the fire, and Nearest breathes a puff of air disapprovingly. Deirdre turns to Nearest.
You have something to say there?
Nearest, suddenly bashful.
No. Nothing.
I didn't think so.
The fire begins to flicker as the wind outside picks up. Brennard faces the mouth of the cave and stares at something with pure terror. They all turn to see that a black cloth has wrapped itself around Godric's head at the front of the cave. He struggles with it as it drags him up into the air off his feet. Deirdre quickly aims the wand at the cloth.
Expecto Patronum!
A small burst of Patronus light forces the creature holding on to Godric to release him as it is ejected out into the storm. Godric emerges from the cloth-like folds, gasping for air. A second black cloth floats menacingly out of the storm toward them. Silently, it drifts closer and closer, and the first one comes back for a second try. Everyone is afraid to make any sudden moves. Deirdre raises her wand again, and the two cloths move quickly. One swings through the cave, smacking the wand out of Deirdre's hand, as well as knocking Salena back into the wall, where she hits her head and falls unconscious. The second grabs Godric's leg as he was crawling away, and begins dragging him out of the cave. Salazar jumps on the cloth to try to wrestle it into submission. Deirdre clambers on the dark ground, trying to find the wand. The cloth-like creature is pinned down by Salazar's knees, and as it cannot get away, it begins constricting Godric's leg. Godric cries out in pain as Salazar tries to pry the cloth off of him. Nearest picks up the wand and points it at the creature as it turns to target her as the new threat.
Confringo!
A fiery jolt of energy makes contact with the cloth and explodes. The explosion causes the loose rocks in the cave to rain down on them, and forces Salazar to be thrown off the other cloth as it resumes its escape, dragging Godric along with it. The other one bursts through the violent eruption and shoves Nearest back, causing her to tumble painfully over the rocky cave floor. Deirdre reaches her as she cowers in the fetal position, clutching the wand in her hands pitifully on the ground. Deirdre snatches the wand from her and stands to take aim again.
Expecto Patronum!
This time, the Patronus light forms into the shape of a leaping toad as it flies through the air to collide with the cloth, tackling it to the ground. The toad recovers and hops again onto the second creature, pulling Godric out of the cave. Waves of Patronus light surge from the toad as it chases the creatures out of the cave and into the storm. A view from above the cave shows the two cloak-shaped attackers soar up and out of frame in different directions. Back inside the cave, Godric lies on the floor holding his leg, breathing heavily as the Patronus hops past him. It hops to rest in front of Deirdre, who watches the small toad lower its head in a kind of bow. Then the Patronus fades into bluish silvery light and is gone. Salazar rushes to Salena as he runs past Nearest, still on the ground cowering. She sits up, realizing the creatures are gone. She sees Godric trying to get up on his injured leg, and she hurries over to him. Deirdre moves over to check on Salena. Nearest reaches Godric, who is already on his feet and hobbling over to check on Salena. Nearest is left standing there, stunned, as Godric meanders past her. Godric holds out his hand for the wand. Deirdre looks at him apprehensively, while Salazar holds a cloth from his robes around Selena's bleeding head.
She'll be alright, although I've never been very good at healing incantations. That was always Paddock's area of expertise. Allow me. Please. Let me help.
Deirdre hands over the wand. Godric crouches down and begins quietly reciting a spell. The blood from the cloth on her head is reabsorbed into her scalp, and her eyes begin to flutter as the wound heals. Nearest suddenly speaks up frantically.
Ricky, what about Brennard?
They look to Brennard as Esmond watches over him. He lies unconscious, sprawled out pathetically on the floor of the cave.
He'll be fine. He's only fainted.
Nearest looks down at him. Salena wakes, instantly wincing at the pain from her head. She blinks and looks up to see Godric. In that moment, she reads his thoughts and smiles to see how compassionate he can be. Godric steps back and Deirdre and Salazar lean in to calm her.
You're all right. They're gone.
Salena looks around the cave for them.
What were those things?
They're called Lethifolds, and a Patronus is their one and only weakness.
How is it we didn't run into them on our way into the coven?
We had Helga's guardian to protect us, remember? Aye, you mightn't have seen them, but you can be sure they saw you.
Painfully, Salena sits up and they help her.
Nasty creatures. They call them the living shrouds, and they served a greater purpose tonight. Whoever comes looking for Brunnard won't dare come searching in the dark and storm, as there aren't many witches or wizards that can produce a corporeal Patronus.
It may go without saying, but once again you've saved us, Deirdre.
They sneaked up on us, they did, but it wasn't all me. Without Godric, you'd still be out cold, so we should give thanks for his efforts as well.
All eyes look to Godric.
I helped with the recovery, but there would be nothing to recover if it weren't for you. Thank you for saving us, Mistress Deirdre. I owe you a life debt.
Godric steps toward her with his hand held out, ready to shake. She takes his hand and he gives a small bow. She shakes it in her manly way as Nearest glares at her from the background. Salazar stands up and comes at Godric angrily.
You think just because we didn't give you up to those creatures, that means we're all chummy friends now? No, not at all. I don't think we've forgotten that it's your fault that we're all stranded out here. It's your fault we haven't wands, and it's your fault Deirdre lost her home and tavern all in one night.
Weren't you just griping about how this was all your fault? If you and that elf hadn't come snooping around, none of this would have happened, and Herwood would still be alive. If Paddock hadn't stopped you, that thing you were playing with could have destroyed the whole coven.
Nearest moves to shriek back, but Godric grabs her by the arm.
Oh,
Stop!
Silence as all look at him and he addresses Salazar.
You're right. It is all my fault. I had a bad feeling about that grimoire from the start, but I never had the courage to say anything to Ronan or the others. I know that his blood is on my hands, and I have to live with that. I also know that I would have met the same end if it weren't for you, Salazar.
Salazar's expression changes to surprise.
Don't think I've forgotten how you pushed me out of the way of certain death. If it weren't for you snooping on us in that forest,
Turning to Nearest,
we'd all be nothing but a pile of ashes lying in that clearing.
then back to Salazar.
I owe you a life debt as well. I may never be able to repay you, but I hope that you'll forgive me for the way that I've treated you and Salena. Please accept my sincere gratitude, and my unwavering commitment to you both.
Godric holds out his hand for Salazar to shake. Salazar glances at Godric's hand, then back at Godric. With the frustration fading from his face, he finally takes his outstretched hand with a firm shake.
Right. Well, we'll be off then.
Turning to leave with what's left of his gang, Deirdre pipes up.
And where might you be off to in the middle of a storm such as this? We appreciate everything you've done, but you don't need to...
You've proven yourself not to be a complete waste of talent, lad. Besides, we only have the one wand, and you wouldn't last an hour on your own without magic. Though I would love to see you try.
She chuckles and Godric gives a smirk and a humble bow of his head.
I'll take watch. I suggest you all get some rest. The sun will be up in a few hours, and I don't mean to stay here any longer than I have to.
Everyone moves around the cave to find a place to sleep for the night. Godric gives Salena a smile and a nod, then takes his place to rest. Nearest moves over to Godric's place and gives her an angry look. Salena walks over to Deirdre, who assumes a watchful position at the mouth of the cave. Salazar sits on the cold hard ground and eyes her as she goes, clearly upset, wishing he could read her mind for once.
Deirdre, I wanted to apologise to you.
Like I said, lass, it isn't ideal what's happened, but it really was for the best.
It's not about that. I wanted to apologise for reading your thoughts. I panicked and I couldn't help but see what seemed like a private memory of yours when you were casting that Patronus spell.
Never mind about that, girlie. It was just a happy memory more than a lifetime ago.
Those women, were they your family?
Deirdre speaks solemnly now.
Aye, they were as close a family as I ever had. Haven't seen or heard of them in years. You see, in order to conjure a Patronus, you must recall a powerful memory. The happiest one you've got. And that Patronus is powered by those positive vibrations. Those two, they were me sisters. My happy memory for all me life. But with the way the world's going, it's hard for me to believe me sisters lasted this long. I wasn't even sure that memory would be powerful enough to conjure a Patronus these days.
It seems like not even time itself could keep a memory as powerful as that from fading. I hope you can find your sisters.
Aye, they might still be out there, fighting the fight. No use stressing about something that might just be all in your head. And that goes for that serpent over there.
Jerking her head in Salazar's direction.
Don't let him bother you. You saved his life tonight, and he's probably just ashamed because he should be protecting you, not the other way around.
I guess I'm not very good at reading people unless I can read their thoughts.
Don't you fret about it. He'll get over himself once he learns to recognize his own potential.
She responds with a gentle smile.
Good night, Deirdre.
Good night, lass.
Salena leaves her as the rest have started to fall asleep, and the scene pans out into the rain and away into the dark night. End scene. Act 2, Scene 1. Interior, cave on the cliffside, sunrise. Open on Salazar asleep, the sun barely lighting the cave. Deirdre's foot gives him a wake-up kick. He rolls over, looking angry. She looks at him and jerks her head as a signal to follow her. He watches her as she makes her way out into the sunlight. He looks at Salena, fast asleep, and then reluctantly follows. Cut to Deirdre and Salazar on their way down to a small riverbank. She sits down on a large boulder, and with the wand still in her hands, she creates a large, clear bubble from the tip of the wand that splashes heavily into the water. She motions for him to take a seat next to her. He does. You're a ruddy idiot. You know that? Salazar, surprised by her harsh words. And a pleasant morning to you too. I know what's upsetting you, lad. Of course I haven't known you for long, but don't think I haven't noticed how important that sister of yours is to you. She's a powerful witch, Salazar. The likes of such that I never seen. And I've known a few. Don't think I haven't noticed how powerful you are as well. And clever as a gorgon too. But you're a prideful little bugger, mind you. And that's where you get into trouble. Salazar tries to speak. No, don't interrupt me. How's about you listen for a change? He is surprised again as she looks deeply into his eyes. You are all that girl needs. She looks at him challengingly, and he looks out across the water, still bitter. In her eyes, you couldn't get much better than you are now. She cares for you just the same as you care for her, and yet you don't treat her like the brother she needs. Instead, you attempt to be the father she's already had. You've allowed your pride to tell you that because you're older, you know best. You have to do all the protecting and heavy lifting, but that's just not so. Instead of resenting her for being such a strong witch, you should try trusting her for a change. Besides that prideful streak of yours, I've also noticed your determination. I've seen how determined you are to do whatever it takes to keep others safe. Let that determination outweigh your pride, lad. Choose now to be her biggest supporter, and revel in the fact that she might just show you up from time to time. She stares out across the river solemnly. There could come a day when you'll give anything just to be shown up by her again. Believe you may. A silence as Deirdre gets lost in a memory. Salazar humbles himself. Thank you, Deirdre. I see now how foolish I've been, and I'm determined to make it right. I plan on making good when it comes to Salena. As you said, she's been through enough, and doesn't need another reason to resent the world. Another reason? You think that Salena resents the world? Can you blame her? After what we've been through? Deirdre doesn't respond, but she eyes Salazar, recognizing his own feelings toward the world being projected onto his younger sister. Something tells her he's been lectured enough for one day, and she shakes the thought away. Another silence passes between them as the world wakes up. What do you plan to do now? I figure we need to get you two a few good ones. You'll be no use to me if we have to share this one. Salazar turns to look at her. She smiles without looking back. Then I suppose it's untold for us. You mean you want us to come with you? Well, I can't bloody well fight this war on my own now, can I? Noticing the look of elation on his face. Wipe that stupid look off your face. No soldier should be that excited about going to war. It's indecent. We best be heading back. The others will be waking soon, and they're all just as famished as we are. With a kind of twirl of the wand, the bubble splashes out of the water and into the air, dripping water like a fishing net would, now containing half a dozen fish flopping about. They flop around as Salazar looks at her, excited about their future for the first time in a while. They make their way back up to the cave. End scene. Act 2, Scene 2. Interior, cave on the cliffside. Morning. Close up on Godric as he sleeps. He stirs and rolls over. Nearest's arm flops over his shoulder as she snuggles up to him. He lifts his head to look down at who's invading his personal space. She speaks with her eyes still closed and a sleepy smile stretched across her pointy face.
Not such a terrible night after all, eh, Ricky?
Remembering the night before, he drops his head with a loud huff and a thump. Salena sits up, rubbing her face and looking to where Salazar slept. His place is empty. She looks around the cave, worried.
Did anyone see where Salazar went off to? And Deirdre?
Extremely worried, she gets to her feet. Everyone begins to wake up, Brennard sleepily yawning.
You know, I had the most bizarre nightmare.
Then Deirdre and Salazar walk into the cave looking cheery, with an array of fish now motionless inside the bubble that floats behind them. Brennard looks aghast at the display of magic and faints again.
Just because you got that wand away from him doesn't mean you're the only one that should use it.
Shut up, Nearest.
Nearest, taken aback by his tone.
You did bring enough for all of us, didn't you?
Deirdre doesn't react to Esmond's whining, other than allowing her smile to fade from her face. She lights up the fire with her wand and drags the fish through the air, popping the bubble as the fish hover magically over the fire, roasting themselves. Salazar crosses to Salena and embraces her lovingly. She is caught off guard by this affection.
I don't know what I would do without you.
Salena still being hugged.
Now I'm really worried.
Salazar releases her, but leaves his hands on her arms tenderly.
I haven't been giving you the credit you deserve. You're a powerful witch, Salena, and I'm glad to have you by my side. I've been a fool. The last few weeks have been...
I know. And I'm sorry you felt like it was all on you to figure this out. We'll do it together from now on.
Together.
Godric watches Salena talk with Salazar as they embrace. Nearest and Esmond cross the cave to confront him.
Godric, what are you doing? What do you mean?
Nearest exchanges a look with Esmond briefly, then she leans in to whisper.
Ricky, you're not actually going to stick with them, are you?
Of course I am. Where else will we go?
How do you expect to trust them after all that's happened?
I think they've proven themselves trustworthy. We made it through the night, didn't we?
Your father's going to come looking for us, and we should use them as leverage to get our lives back.
I don't want my life back. That was no life to begin with. This is a fresh start for all of us.
Really, Ricky? No want, nowhere to go, and no prospects? That sounds like a fresh start to you?
It sounds a hell of a lot better than going back to the Hollow after what's happened.
I'll take my chances in Sanctuary rather than out here with no way to protect myself, thank you very much.
Godric leans in to whisper through his teeth.
You'd really turn them in? After all they've done for us?
They're waiting to do the same thing to us. Why do you think they haven't left yet?
I meant what I said, and you know it's true. They're in this mess because of us. You'd really turn them over to take a punishment they don't deserve?
Better them than us.
Esmond nods in agreement. Godric stares at them incredulously.
Oi, you lot! What are you doing just standing about?
They all spin around thinking they've been discovered.
Why don't you make yourselves useful and find us something to eat off of?
Nearest rolls her eyes at Godric and they all split up looking for flat rocks to use as plates. Godric kicks Brennard, who awakes with a small yelp. Cut to a scene of all of them sitting around eating. Esmond and Nearest try to get Brennard to eat something, but he just stares with his eyes wide at the fire. Salazar, Salena, and Godric lean in, listening intently to Deirdre's plan.
How much time do you figure we've got until their search parties find us?
The sun won't deter the Letterfolds. It just makes it harder for him to hunt us. I'm sure Godfrey will have sent out a guardian to search every cave and shadowed space in these hills before those men come looking for us. That's what he did when your mother ran away. So, we're just going to let them find us here.
Deirdre nods her head while she swallows her unseasoned fish.
I want Godfrey to know that his Letterfolds didn't get the better of us. I presume their scout will find us any minute now. That'll be our sign to separate so they can't follow our trail.
Isn't that dangerous? Salena and I have never operated properly.
You what?
Godric raises his hand, ashamed.
Neither have I.
You got to be bloody joking.
They never taught us because they said there was no reason to ever leave the coven. Every one of us would come off splinched if we tried it.
We can't possibly go the whole way on foot.
Unless you can whittle us a few broomsticks, we don't have much of a choice. Travelling to Alba on foot is a death sentence with witch hunters about. Not to mention the cold of winter coming on fast. A chance we could use a portkey. That's a fine idea, lad, but have you ever managed to create a portkey? It's a lot more than point and shoot, you know.
I've done it once, when Godfrey needed to travel to Londonburg for a meeting with the Wizards' Council.
He wanted me to learn how to do it so I could help banish people one day.
Godric raises the hat.
He always uses this hat to travel or expel any of the others he deemed unfit to stay in our coven.
An awkward pause as he smiles wickedly.
I'm sure he's pissed not to get it back this time. I must say, I'm not too eager to travel in that hat again. It was unbearable enough the first time when someone experienced was doing the pointing and the shooting. I could get us to Londonburg at the least. I believe we're going to need more help than the ranks we have now, even if we were armed with wands. And what do you suggest?
I happen to have made the acquaintance of a member of the Wizards' Council, and I believe I might be able to persuade her to grant us a meeting. Salena reads his mind to find romantic thoughts concerning this woman. She hides her blushing face by looking down at her food and eating to keep busy. We can state our case, and maybe they will help strengthen our numbers. Very noble of you, lad, but the Wizards' Council don't give a damn about the bloody King of Fratricide. They seem to think that wizards are better off in hiding, where we can't be chased out of town for using our hopping pots. Yes, but if you would just speak to them, I think... No, lad. We will not be needing any assistance from the Wizards' Council. I can gather all the numbers I need without the likes of them. Then a voice comes from the mouth of the cave.
Might you be referring to us, mistress?
All heads turn in alarm to see Paddock walking into the cave with her children, all carrying traveling sacks larger than they are. Salena gives a gasp and runs to wrap Paddock in a gentle hug. Deirdre and Salazar follow to welcome them. After Salena releases Paddock, Deirdre kneels beside the elf and they grasp hands firmly. Then Deirdre stoops and pulls Paddock into a loving embrace. Deirdre's eyes well with tears of joy to see her faithful friend.
How did you find us?
Oh, it was far too easy, sir. You haven't chosen a good hiding place at all. Paddock fears we need to be going, madam. Godfrey has just chased us out of your tavern and...
That's not fair! It's rightfully your home. Deirdre would want you to take over if she couldn't.
Paddock put up a fight, but Paddock was forced out. Paddock couldn't stop them, miss. We brought all that we could before they tried to detain us, madam. Paddock is so ashamed.
You did beautifully, Paddock. I'd expect nothing less from the likes of Godfrey. No house elf would be permitted to run a wizard's tavern, even in a so-called safe haven like the Hollow. I'm glad you got away and were able to find us. Grey pipes up.
Everyone knows where they obliviate people, and the cave was the first thing we saw when we apparated.
Then Malkin chimes in with a judgmental tone.
You couldn't have found any place better to hide, mistress.
Esmond notices the wands in Malkin's hand.
You brought our wands?
How did you manage to get them?
Malkin begins passing out the wands to their rightful owners.
Malkin went to Godfrey's cottage to see if Malkin could find your wands, and Malkin had some help finding them.
Who helped you?
It was the house elf that serves your family. Naturally, Godfrey suspected we had broken in and taken them, and that's why Godfrey came knocking.
It was then that he revealed that Brunard never returned. Paddock knew you had gotten the better of him, so we packed up as much as we could, right under Godfrey's nose, and here we are. Godfrey was trying to question us to see if we had some idea where you had gone, but if Godfrey could have seen how poor the mistress was at hiding, Godfrey wouldn't have bothered. That's quite enough, Paddock. I think we know how you feel about our hideout. You're just in time for breakfast. Then we'll douse the fire and get as far from here as possible. Although, someone will need to confront Brunard before he faints again.
Show Brunard shaking his head and starting to sob silently as he stares at all the wands. Then he looks up toward the mouth of the cave as a blue light illuminates his face and he sinks below the large rock to cower out of sight. The shadows in the cave are chased away by the blue light. Everyone turns to see that a Patronus in the form of a lioness has entered the cave. Everyone is silent. It stops as they all stare at it, and then it rapidly streaks into the air and back out of the cave to report to its conjurer. In a kind of blur, Nearest jumps to her feet, drawing her wand and pointing it at Deirdre's chest. Nearest speaks to Godric and Esmond.
What are you waiting for? We have our wands now. We don't need them.
Esmond stands and aims his wand at Salazar. Deirdre stares down the tip of the wand with a wild smirk.
You sure you want to be doing that, lass? You're our only way back into the Hollow.
Nearest nags Godric.
Ricky!
Godric reluctantly raises his wand and aims it at Salena. She looks into his eyes and he looks into hers.
I don't know what's more predictable. That you would be thick enough to choose to go back to that prison sentence of a coven, or that you would turn on us the moment you got your wand back.
Save it! Another move out of any of you, and we'll have to bring you back to the Hollow in pieces and just hope that's good enough for them.
That's an awful lot of talk, miss. Let's see if you even have what it takes.
I've been wanting to show you for some time now.
Godric points his wand at Nearest.
Expelliarmus!
Her wand is flung from her hand as all look to him in surprise. Nearest speaks, having been caught off guard.
Ricky! What happened to you?
Godric turns his wand on Esmond.
This is me. This is who I've always been. I've just never had the courage to stand up to the lot of you. We'd never be in this mess if I would have stood my ground before now, and I'll be damned if I let my moment pass by me again. There's more to life than that coven where every day is the same and nothing changes. Living safely in the Hollow isn't really living at all. Come with us.
As Esmond considers this, Paddock takes the opportunity.
To hell with that.
Paddock casts a pink stream of sparks at Esmond, holding him down on the ground as he tries to cover his face from the stinging sparks. Nearest jumps on Godric and begins beating him like a madwoman with her fist. Godric throws her off of him and she stumbles and falls on her backside. Brunard seizes his chance to make a run for it. Looking over his shoulder as he runs out of the cave, he collides with one of Godfrey's men who had been trying to sneak up on them. Godfrey commands his thugs.
Attack!
The scene immediately erupts in shouting of spells and powerful blasts of magic. Immediate chaos as Godfrey and his team fire stunning spells. Deirdre, Salazar, and Salena use protection spells to block and deflect the bombardment of jinxes. Esmond cries out in pain as Paddock still holds him under the spray of sparks. Salena grabs Paddock and pulls her away from Esmond as Grey and Malkin run for cover. Godric conjures a shield in front of Deirdre, protecting her from a heavy rain of hexes.
Protego!
She looks up at Godric, who saved her life.
Consider your debt paid, lad. Don't be afraid to fire back at them. It's our lives we're fighting for.
Grey and Malkin continue to shield the rest from the onslaught of spells that cause the cave to shake. The battle rages on as 4 or 5 of Godfrey's goons send stunning spells through the cave, cracking and splintering the rocks. Godfrey sends sparks into the air from outside the cave to signal his team that they found them. Godric and Salazar crouch behind the same boulder, using it as a barricade, while they cast hexes at the army that has cornered them. The elves run back and forth between boulders, shooting powerful silver comet-like blasts from the palms of their hands with incredible accuracy. Salena disarms a goon and then fires a jinx that knocks him into another. For every henchman that falls, 2 more land on brooms or apparate into the mouth of the cave. Deirdre covers Salena as rock from the ceiling of the cave comes crashing down near them. Grey is hit in the face with a stunning spell and tumbles on the jagged rocks. Paddock leaves her post to run to her daughter when an orange whip flashes through the cave, slicing a few stalactites that crash down, separating the elves from view. Silence falls as the dust settles. Deirdre and Malkin look anxiously toward the pile of rocks, unable to tell if Paddock and Grey were spared. Godfrey walks slowly through the cave and jerks his wand down at his waist to retract the orange whip with a snap.
Give it up, before any more of you get hurt.
Deirdre, Grey, and Salena look to Godric and Salazar. Salazar is bleeding badly from a cut on his temple. They know they are trapped and defeated. Paddock freezes, her eyes looking from Godfrey to the mound of fallen rocks where her daughter lies.
We have you cornered. Relinquish your wands and come out from behind your barricades.
Deirdre, Malkin, and Salena look to Godric and Salazar.
Continue to resist, and some of you may not live to see what life awaits you in exile.
The divided group look at each other, and Godric holds up the folded and crinkled hat to suggest it may be their only hope. Godfrey slashes his wand through the air again, causing the whip to slice more stalactites from the roof of the cave. Deirdre, Paddock, and Salazar successfully cast protection spells over their heads, and the rocks crash down around them. Salazar gives Godric a nod to show that he concurs with his plan. They look to Deirdre, who gives them a slow nod as well.
Godric, this is your last chance to prove you're not a coward. Don't be a fool.
Godric's face is full of resentment and anger as he taps the hat and whispers, Portus. The hat glows blue and quivers in Godric's hands.
I give you to the count of 3 to surrender your wands and face the consequences of your actions.
Salena nudges Malkin and points up at the stalactites that hang over Godfrey and his thugs. Malkin smiles to show that he understands.
1.
Deirdre looks over at Paddock, who nods.
2.
Salazar looks fearfully at Salena as Godric sounds off.
3!
Salena and Malkin cast spells at the stalactites, causing them to crumble down in a dusty diversion of debris. Paddock sneaks between the rocks, finally reaching Grey, who is safe from the rubble except for her leg that is trapped under a large rock. Paddock disapparates with her and their 2 packs. They appear next to Deirdre just as Godric and Salazar run across the divide, firing spells blindly into the cloud of dust that obscures the thugs from view. Everyone grabs the brim of the hat as it begins to vibrate. Nearest grabs onto Selena's foot, and Salena gives her a swift kick in the face when she releases her grip. Paddock makes eye contact with Esmond, hiding in a crevice in the cave wall. She glares at him, and he cowers in his hiding place. The hat begins to spin just as Godfrey emerges from the cloud of dust to catch a glimpse of his son using his own hat to escape. Godric gives a final glare at his father, and they all disappear into the portkey. End of Chapter 3.